Alrighty, let's take a look at a few things. Let's talk about a few of those housekeeping things you guys were talking about. I want to do it on here so everybody can hear. The CompXM packets are in. They were supposed to be sent to me, and I didn't get them yesterday. I wanted to bring them this morning and hand them out. So let's do this. They should be in. I'll try to track them down if I can, and if you guys want to stop by today or tomorrow and pick them up, you're welcome to. Okay. If you don't, what I will do, because the packet's nothing more than really a sheet of paper with your code on it. Okay. Your prepaid code, and so if I don't get them, or if you guys don't stop and pick them up, I'll email those codes out. I'll assign you each a code, and then I'll just email those out to everybody. In the event you would like to get started on this over spring break, you might. Again, it's a fairly lengthy process. 5 to 8 hours is what folks in the past have told me that this exam will take, and you can start and stop it as often as you like. Okay, so it's not 5 to 8 hours at one sitting. You can work on it for half an hour and then quit and go back to it later. So don't fret so much about having to sit at one time. My advice would be that you'd probably want to set aside an hour or so each time so that you might be able to get through a full round. Do that kind of a thing, and then maybe answer the questions. The questions I've been trying to on your guys' assignments, the last few, I've been trying to put in questions that are very similar to what they'll ask on this CompXM, on some of the queries, just to get you guys an idea. I mean, it's about taking a look at these financials and digging out the information and thinking them through. And if you do a good job of that, it will take you a little bit of time. I'm skipping over some of the easier questions that they ask, sorry. So they do ask some that are a little bit easier. But my experience, just so you know, has been with the CompXM that most students kind of, when they get asked answering the questions, their response is, oh my God, okay? It would be unusual if I didn't get emails from you guys that are like, oh my God, how much is this going to affect my grade? Because it is difficult, okay? It's not an easy exam, so kind of be ready for it. Spend some time. For those of you that are doing a good job of answering the questions that we have here in the homework, you'll probably do a reasonably good job on the CompXM. If you're sliding past some of these homework questions, hoping to get by, you'll probably do a poor job on the CompXM. So just to give you an idea. When you register for that, please, if you can, go to that. Right now, I think there's a CompXM, to say there's one associated with it or something like that. Okay, and so if you click on that, it's going to ask you for payment. Okay, do not give them a credit card. Do not give them any more money. You have already paid. There was a lab fee for this class, and so you have already paid for the CompXM. Okay, and the code that I give you is proof of that payment. Okay. And so there is a place on there, and I don't get to do this, so I'm trusting what you guys have told me in the past. There's a place on there where you can click, and what's it say, Hiram?
It says you can just add a registration code.
Add your registration code or enter a registration code.
When you click on the CompXM thing?
No, when you click on payment needed. Because that's what I did is when
you're first logging in, did you click on CompXM?
No, you click on the payment section where it says you can pay for it. You click on that and it gives you an option to input a code.
I think she's trying to get just to the CompXM to begin with, though, right?
Oh, okay. Never mind. I see
Got
what
it.
you're talking about.
Okay. So yeah, the main thing is don't give them any money. If you have some problems getting logged in or whatever, let us know. Or again, I'll tell you, and I told you at the start of the semester, I haven't talked about it since, but if you're working on this over the break, say, call their help desk. Their help desk is really, really good. So if you're having problems logging in, you got your code. Let's say I send you your code, and you're just trying to figure it out. Just give their help desk a call. They'll walk you through it in a couple minutes, and you'll be good to go. You just let them know that you already paid for it, that you have a code, and I'm sure that they would walk you through it without any problems if you're interested in getting going on that. And again, I recommend, you know, opening it up and taking a look at it. And did we already have the time change or something?
No, it's Sunday.
Oh, it's like Sunday? Jeez. Yeah. All right. Any questions about that? Okay, so I'll get those codes out to you, but if you stop in, if you want to pick up that packet, please do so. That save me the hassle of having to retype all those codes and hopefully not make a mistake while I'm typing them, because that can happen. So no round over spring break, but your next decisions are going to be due the Monday that we get back from spring break. So, you know, you guys play that as you would like, you know.
So these decisions aren't due for basically a whole nother week.
Right, right. But it wouldn't hurt to get them done, you know, now while you're together and thinking about it and all those things, and then you can double check them on Monday maybe before they become final type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So just a suggestion. Okay. So we've only got what do we got? 6 rounds left then? Yep, 6 rounds until the end, and then you guys will have your Comp XM. Okay, and that'll be pretty much it. By the way, if you've been struggling a little bit on the homework assignments, my intent is to make them keep getting harder too. So, you know, keep that in mind. That follow along. You know, I think those of you that are following along and paying attention here are doing okay, and folks that aren't paying much attention here are struggling with the homework assignments. So, you know, a lot of the stuff I go over is similar to what you get in the future. I've kind of said that, right? And so, not that it's going to be exactly the same, but you know, there's a few problems here, like determining what your sales could have been, you know, doing the actual versus potential. You know, I've asked 4 or 5 questions on that and gone through it 4 or 5 times, and some of you have missed it, you know, 4 or 5 times that it's been on your homework assignments. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, you know, because we've gone through it pretty painstakingly and pretty detailed, and so I'd leave that up to you all, I guess. Okay. So let's take a look at last week's, oops, let me get here first. I want to open up the Courier, and then we'll take, oops, gosh darn it. And this is slower than molasses, so then I click on the wrong button, and then I got to go back and look at round 1. For last week's assignment, we'll take a look at. I threw one curveball in on this one that nobody got. Is Garrett bugging you again, Aaron?
Yeah, he smells bad.
Huh?
He smells bad.
Is that it? Gosh.
No, that computer won't start up.
And wrestling's over and all of that, and he's still kind of, man, I tell you. He hasn't showered since Nationals or something, is that? By the way, while we're all enjoying a nice spring break with a week off and going off and doing whatever, poor Molly's got to be practicing, and then she's going to be traveling. She doesn't get an all-expense paid vacation, sort of, to the Kansas area, anyhow, to represent our school in the national tournaments. So good luck to you guys if I forget. And you can watch those games too. It's really not that expensive. I think you can stream them. You can get like the whole package for $20 or something, and each individual game's like $8 or $9 or $10 or something like that. So you can stream the games if you got an interest. It's great to get, like, if you get 2 or 3 people together and you all throw in a couple bucks, it's really pretty inexpensive. So make sure you have a good connection though, because it can get slowed up a little bit and a little jumpy at times. So anyhow, so last week's assignment, let's go take a look at that. That's as big as I can get it there. So suppose Digby wanted to reduce its leverage ratio at the end of round 1 by using cash to pay down debt. What amount would have been necessary for Digby to have achieved a leverage asset ratio of 2.25, which is the level at which I start penalizing folks? And it's fine for you, and we talked about it a little bit, that it tells you what they use to calculate the ratio. So leverage is equal to assets divided by equity. Okay, so you've got a couple of different things in here. Okay, your equity is not going to change. We went over that, right? If you pay down debt, if you take cash and you pay down debt, your equity amount's not going to change. Your asset amount's going to change, but your equity amount isn't going to change, right? Okay, so we know then the leverage, because I asked you for that. So leverage is equal to assets divided by equity. So leverage of 2.25 is equal to our X. That's what we're going to be solving for. We want to know what level of assets we need to be at, okay, in order to have this kind of a ratio. And then our equity stays the same, which is given to us in the problem. If we go take a look at it. Oops, got to come down to the balance sheet. 46,068,000. Okay, if we take out the zeros. So again, 2.25 is equal to X over that. It's simply a matter of multiplying both sides by 46,068,000. So so I kind of skipped, I guess, a step there. I'm sorry, but solving your algebra would just be multiplying both sides by 46,068,000. So you get 2.25 times 46 million equals 103,653,000. Okay, so the actual answer then that I was looking for was what amount would have been necessary, what amount would we have had to pay down debt. And so we take what our assets were, our actual assets were, total assets 115,428,000. So we take that 115,428,000 and we subtract the 103,653,000, and we end up with 11,775,000 is the correct answer for that one. That's how much the pay down would have been, right? So another way to look at it, if our assets were 103,653,000 and this remained our equity, our ratio would be 2.25. Okay. You know, those are important things when you go talk to your banker. You know, they're interested. Now we didn't look at a debt ratio like or a leverage ratio like they use here. We typically used a debt to asset ratio or a debt to equity ratio, one of those two in our banking world, but different places probably use different ratios, and they all kind of refer to the same thing there when we're talking about debt. Okay. 2, in the performance segment, how much money after taxes did Baldwin leave on the table? And again, this is the 4th or 5th time we've kind of done this, but in this case we just added the income tax component. So 28.2% is what their potential was, 20.9% was the actual, so 7.3%. Total sales for that segment were 2.315. So 7.3% of that means that they could have sold an additional almost 169,000 units. Okay, their price for that was $33, and so $33 times what they could have sold, 169, would give you a little over $5.5 million in total sales. Okay, so we got units, we got sales, then we have to calculate their marginal variable cost. Okay. This week's assignment, we're going to get away from marginal variable cost a little bit, so make sure I talk about that. But anyhow, 168, the same number of units, their cost per unit, their labor cost plus their material cost, and I didn't do that math on here, but add those two together and you get $25.10. Make sure to take a look at that performance segment. Oops, I got to go up. I'm sorry. I forget sometimes where I should be. So in the performance segment, it was Baldwin, 16.13 plus $8.97, right? So 25.10. Okay. Is their variable cost, total variable cost. So do the multiplication. Their total variable cost to produce those units would have been 4,241,775. Subtract the 2, and we get our earnings before taxes would have been, okay, 1,335,000. We discovered that our tax rate was 35%, and we could do this by looking at the income statement of any team, really, and taking their taxes that they paid and divide it by their income, okay, before tax. their earnings before tax. So their taxes would have been $467,271. So subtract the earnings before taxes, subtract the taxes from the earnings before taxes, and you should get $867,789. And there's nothing complicated about this, but it's just taking each step one at a time, painstakingly. You know, get your little calculator out of your Excel and put all the stuff in there. And if you do it, again, step by step, you should be able to come up with that kind of an answer. And several of you did okay on that one, but several of you did not. So 3 was the one I kind of threw a curve. Okay, Digby's forecasting sales next round on the low end. It's estimating that it will sell 1,715 units of Dell, its low-end product. Digby wants to have an extra 10% of units on hand above and beyond its forecast in case sales are better than expected. It would risk the possibility to rather have excess inventory than risk a stock out. Taking current inventory into account, what will Dell's production after adjustment, that's the curveball, okay, have to be in order to have 10% reserve of units available for sale. So we know that they're estimating that they're going to sell 1,715 units, so we need that much, and then they want 10% above that. Okay, this is the way the question reads. So we take the 1,715 times 110%, or 1.1. And so our projected sales plus the surplus that we want to have is 1,887. Okay. Some of you took the 10% times, you subtracted the inventory first and then took the 10%. Okay, but that's not how the problem reads. So we have to read the problem, and it's they want to have an extra 10% above and beyond its forecast, right? So it identifies its forecast. So 1,887, it does have 131 units on hand. So they're going to have a total necessary production of 1,756. Some of you got to that number, okay, but then you didn't do the adjustment part, and that was the curveball. Sorry, I threw you guys a nasty curve in here, because if you look at your production, whenever you enter your production into the production decisions, you'll note that there's a 1%, okay, there's a 1% loss of stuff because of whatever, right? Stuff that didn't conform, so it gets pulled out and not sold. Okay, if you go look at any of your, go to your decisions and put in production. If it says if you say you want to make 1,000 units, it's going to tell you that you're going to have 990 units, right? Because there's a 1% adjustment there for lost inventory for whatever reason. And the way to calculate that then would be I rounded this, by the way, it's 1755.5. I rounded it up 1756. If you divide that 1756 by the 0.99, that gives you what you would actually have to call for, okay, in production in order to get the proper amount. Okay, little curve. I get
1755.5 if it's 1887.
Well, the rounding would be up here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not here. So you're right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so a little bit of a curveball there. Yeah, be aware that you have those adjustments that have to get made. So 4 had more problems with than what I would have expected. I thought this one was really straightforward, and yet few people, few got this one correct. Dixie ended the year with an awareness of 57%. And by the way, there was a lot of folks that put 75% for their answer here, and they had absolutely no work. Okay, so they were 1% off. And without showing me their work, I had absolutely no idea if they had the wrong answer, clearly the wrong answer, okay, because you go back and round it and do all kinds of things, and 75% wasn't 74%. So I have no idea if they were right or wrong. I mean, obviously it was the wrong answer, but had they shown their work, I might have been able to figure out something, okay, but there was no work shown, so all I could fathom is that they might have taken a guess and gotten kind of close. Dixie ended the year with awareness of 57%. If Digby invests $1.5 million in promotion next year, what will Dixie's awareness be? Yeah, I tried to take some numbers straight out of the guide to make it relatively easy, and it tells us in the guide that we're going to lose 1/3 of our awareness each year from the prior year, right? So if we had 60% awareness, we're going to lose 20%. because we're going to lose 1/3, right? In our case, we had 57% awareness, and we lost 1/3. You can calculate it 100 different ways, but I did it this way. 57% times 2/3 would give me that answer. So 38% is what we would start the year with then. If we didn't invest anything, we'd start the year with 38%. And then the guide tells us that if we invest 100 or 1.5 million, we'll pick up about 36%. So 38 plus 36, we end up 74% is our answer there. So again, that one was I think pretty straightforward. So any questions about last week's assignment? Okay, let's take a look at this week's assignment.
You never said, are we going to have it on next week?
No.
No.
I did say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's all right. You get those cauliflower ears sometimes, and it kind
That's
of,
my bad.
kind of covers up the, yeah. All right, let's take a look at this week's assignment. And I might have some explaining to do here, so pay attention, okay? I talked about this one. I told you guys I'd probably have this one. Compare the profitability of products coat and bold. Okay, this can be done on a before tax basis using just the information available on the courier. Okay, so it's, again, this sounds probably worse than it is because it shouldn't be that complicated, right? In this case, though, in the last problem, I had marginal variable costs that we used. But in this case, we wouldn't use the marginal variable cost, we would use the contribution margin, okay? Because the products that we sold, maybe were some inventory left over and this and that, so the contribution margin on this one's going to give us a better idea of what the profitability was for those particular sales, okay? So how do we go about it? Let's take a look. I'm gonna come down to here. You guys have this for your own products. Let me go to Digby just because Digby's one that, right? And it kind of breaks it down by product, doesn't it? Okay, if you guys look at your income statement, it breaks down what your income is for each product. Okay, so we know then we can calculate what our sales were for the product, or it tells us, right? Okay. But you can calculate what the sales were for the other team just by taking the number that they sold times the price they sold it at, right? Okay. The direct labor and direct material, this is where you're going to have to use the contribution margin versus the marginal cost. Okay. So if our if our sales were 10 million and our contribution margin was 30% for that product, make sure you go look at that product, not our overall contribution margin. Okay, if our contribution margin for that product was 30%, then our gross would be 3 million, right? Okay, our gross profit would be 3 million for that product. Inventory carry, let's ignore that. Okay, let's ignore inventory carry because I'm more interested in what we actually profited. If we had some inventory left over, I'm not so interested in that. Besides, I'm not sure if they tell us how to calculate that anyhow. Okay.
So it's your contribution margin times your
Sales.
sales.
Okay, so we come down here. Depreciation doesn't matter. Okay, because you can't calculate that because you don't know what their depreciation is, right, per item. The SG&A, that's where it gets kind of important, right? The promotions and the sales, and you can ignore the administrative costs because those are pro rata. So does that make sense? So that's how I'd do it. I'd set up 2 columns and just go through the items that I said that you should have, and ignore the items that you're not going to have information on, right? It should be pretty dang straightforward. Okay.
Did you say we do?
Okay. Two. What is the total cost, interest, and fees of Ferris's emergency loan for the year? So Ferris had an emergency loan of about $10,500,000, something like that. Okay, it tells you, I believe, in your guide what interest rates should be. Okay, but there's also a fee. Uncle Al also charges you a fee for an emergency loan. Okay, and you're gonna have to look that up, figure out what that is. That should be available, I think, in the guide. Probably if you look at the guide and you look at the index under emergency loans, it'll probably tell you what that fee is. So you have to take those and you got a simple multiplication times whatever their emergency loan amount was, and it should give you an idea what their.
Shouldn't the fee be a flat fee?
It's not a flat dollar fee; it's a flat percent.
Okay.
It is a percent.
So it's just,
If there's no other information available, the interest rate that you would use would be what they pay on their. It should be what they pay on their short-term debt
times the fee interest.
times the amount of the loan.
Right, and then
So you
plus
would-
the fee interest.
You'd add the interest plus the fee. Okay, 3. Again, this is one that shouldn't come as a surprise, but what total production will be necessary to fill demand next year in the traditional segment? Okay, so you got to calculate what the demand's going to be next year. You got to calculate what the inventory on hand is, and then you got to subtract one from the other. Pretty straightforward. 4. I want you thinking about these ones a little bit. So Digby had $5.369 million in net cash from operations. Aside from depreciation and extraordinary items, the following 3 items were factors in that cash flow, right? Did the account balances of these 3 items increase or decrease on the balance sheet? Okay, so if you look at the cash flow, and let's go do that. Okay, so we look at the cash flow, and we see here for Team Digby, its accounts payable went down. I'm sorry. The accounts payable effect on cash was a negative $315,000. That's the proper way to say that. The effect on cash in its accounts payable was a negative $315,000. What did that do to the accounts payable on the balance sheet? Okay, what's that mean that it does? Accounts payable is liability. Okay, so you got to think it through a little bit on this, is what I'm asking you to do. Okay, same thing for inventory and same thing for accounts receivable. So those 3 categories, you know, their inventory, the effect of inventory on cash was that it increased cash by $1,754,000. What did that do to inventory on the balance sheet? Okay, and its accounts receivable went down $1.5 million. What did that do to accounts receivable on the balance sheet then? What happened to accounts receivable on the balance sheet? Everybody kind of understand the question then? And your answers, you can guess at them because it's 50-50, right? It's just increase or decrease. So you got 3 50-50 chances there. So if you're guessing at all 3, now can you guys from statistics remember what your odds are of getting all 3 of them correct?
Like 6%.
Well, it'd be 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 would be the odds of getting them all wrong, I guess. So you'd have half, you'd have a quarter, you'd have 12.5%. No, that'd be the chances of getting them all right would be 12.5%. Yeah.
I was halfway there.
Yeah.
What are the chances of getting it all wrong?
12.5% then that you get them all wrong too. Then right. So, any questions on those? Questions on the assignment? Okay. And speak now or forever hold your peace.
We'll be speaking later, I guarantee it.
Okay. I'm done then for the day. Where's my deal? There it is.
All right.